years ago, Jen Cousins was a mom of 4 public school kids in Orlando, but she's been a fierce advocate for LGBTQ plus equality. In 2021, she co-founded the Florida Freedom to Read project to combat censorship in Orange County schools. The initiative rapidly grew to tackle censorship statewide and collaborates with Red, Wine, and Blue, Voters of Tomorrow, PEN America, Every Library, the Brooklyn Public Library, We Need Diverse Books, Moms Rising, the Human Rights Campaign, Democracy Forward, and others. They collaborate locally with Come Out with Pride Orlando, the GLBT Center, Zebra Youth, the Orlando Strong Symposium, and others. She's been featured in the Washington Post, NPR, USA Today, Vice Motherboard, the Suburban Woman Problem, the Progress Report, NBC News, as well as all of the outlets here in Central Florida. Jen testified before Congress last year about the harms of Florida's Don't Say Gay law, has spoken at many local school board meetings, the Florida Board of Education meeting, and rallies in support of LGBTQ plus rights. She is the 2023 recipient of the Center of Orlando's Trailblazer Award, and she joins me today for a conversation. So please welcome Jen. Well, welcome, Jen.
Thank you.
It is so wonderful to have you, and I'm so glad that you were able to make it through the rainstorm on Colonial. That's wonderful.
Our summer's been crazy. It's a good thing global warming isn't real.
Yeah, what global warming? Just don't read the paper today about Lake Okeechobee.
Oh, God.
I don't know if anybody else reads the Orlando Sentinel, but it was kind of depressing. So you are from New Jersey.
Yes.
And you studied at the University of Manchester in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
How did that happen?
I never felt quite comfortable in the US. I always knew, especially in my little town in New Jersey where I grew up, New Jersey is a suburb of New York, but it also is very tiny farming communities and whatnot, and I grew up in the more rural part of New Jersey, and so I always knew that there was way better and bigger things out there for me. And so when I started studying art history, my advisor was English and from Manchester.
Okay.
And I went to him one day in my sophomore year and I said, you know what, I think I really need to go to England to study. And he's like, I was just gonna tell you should do that. So the stars all aligned, and because he was from Manchester and gave such great recommendations, and Manchester really is just an incredible university. And I think it's really important for Americans too, when they're going to go abroad, to experience other cities that aren't like the big ones. Like, don't just go to London, don't just go to Paris, explore the other areas. But yeah, it was an incredible experience and very formative for me as a person to not only just go out and leave the country when I was 19, 20 years old, but to just be on my own and create a whole new life,
Right.
away from my family and away from everything that I had ever known. So very character building.
I agree. I lived overseas for years myself, and I left. My initial leaving was when I was 17. So and I was gone from 17 to 18 and then back. So how did you end up then in Florida? Let's just try to get you here and figure out why, if you're over in England having an awesome time, would you come back to Florida?
Well, I eventually had to come back to New Jersey because I had to graduate at the college that I was registered at. It was actually Pennsylvania at the time. And then years later, I just happenstance met my husband, who is also British, but from London, at the bar at a seafood restaurant in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania one night. And just things happened very fast. We got married, we had kids very fast. When we were living in Pennsylvania, and so when we decided to come here, I just had our third child in the end of November. And it was when the first Snowmageddon was happening up north. It was literally every single day it snowed. And it snowed so much that there was nowhere to put all the snow. We could only get into one side of our car because the other side of the driveway was a wall of all the shoveled snow. Like, you would have to go out several times because the county plows would come down and block your driveway, so you'd have to go out again. And it was just getting to be too much. And we used to come here, when we had our first 2 kids, we would pack the van and drive down and come to St. Pete for vacation.
Right.
Because we love the beaches. And I was like, you know what, we should just move to Florida. This is ridiculous. Like,
And you weren't worried about the schools at that point?
no. Because they weren't like that at that point. This is 9 years ago.
Okay, so 9 years ago, you were not worried. You
No,
were
9 years ago,
and-
I was like, you know what, screw it, let's just go to Florida. And we're very fortunate because my husband's job, he's had the same one for about 17 years, and he was working remotely even in Pennsylvania. So they were like, yeah, sure, go ahead. And so we did it. And we just narrowed down into East Orlando. I was like, cool, we're 15 minutes from UCF. Our kids can go there and we'll get bright futures and it'll be awesome. We'll save so much money.
That's right.
You know? And then.
So that leads me to the question of what inspired you to actually start the Florida Freedom to Read project. You know, you've gone through this journey, you've got your kids, you've chosen Florida voluntarily, and here you are. So what happened?
So it was October 26, 2021. Never forget the date. A group of us were rallying at the school board to ask them to extend the mask mandate for 6 weeks because it was, you know, at the tail end of COVID when everybody was just going back to school.
Yep.
And if they extended it to winter break, then that's when the vaccine was opening to the 5 to 11-year-olds. So we're like, just keep the masks, you know, a few more weeks so that those of us who want to keep our kids safe can do so. And then when we come back from winter break, if you don't want to wear a mask, fine, but the rest of us got our kids vaccinated. And back then, public comment was brutal to get in line for because we were fighting Moms for Liberty on the daily, and they would turn up very early, and you're only allowed 30 minutes in Orange County for public comment. So, and it's first come, first serve. So they found out we were rallying, even though our first people got there at noon. They sent Jacob Engels, who is a local Proud Boy, there at like 9 or 10 a.m. So he was the first person in line.
Wow.
And Alicia Farrant, who now sits on our school board, turned up about 15 minutes before they were going to actually let everybody in. And she had a copy of the book Genderqueer in her hand. And I was like, oh God, here we go. Because I had read how Brevard County had banned it 2 weeks earlier without giving it any sort of review at all. They just banned it outright because of the content that's in the book. And so I knew it was going to happen.
Okay.
And it did. So we get let into the building. He's the first person to comment. He's got the book. He's got the sticky notes with the pages that she marked. And he starts reading the 2 pages completely out of context. Teresa Jacobs loses her mind and is like, I can't believe this book is in our schools. This is disgusting. I'm going to make sure it's removed right away. And I'm like watching all this happen and I'm thinking, first of all, this is 2021. We don't ban books like this. Like, what's happening? And second of all, it was extremely personal to me because Genderqueer is the story of a non-binary person coming to terms with how they identify and how they reflect upon life growing up and why they felt like this and, you know, why they did the things they did or had the reactions they did. And my, at the time, just about to be 12-year-old had come out to me a month earlier as non-binary. And so when I read the book, I knew the absolute value of it, that it is, and to this day, it's a suicide prevention tool for kids who don't understand how they're feeling and why they're feeling like that, and in particular, if they don't come from affirming households. Because we know that a lot of LGBTQ youth do not come from affirming households. You know, when my kid came out to me, my first reaction was, okay, do you want to start hormone therapy? Do you want a binder? Do you want this? Do you want that? You know, like I was probably the easiest person in the world to come out to. But always in the back of my mind with all that is worrying about the kids who don't have that kind of support at home. And so by the district taking away that book automatically without even knowing what it was about, like they did not know, the board did not know what the book was about. They just heard the words that he was saying out of context, and they made an absolute judgment on it and decided to remove it from all student access. And I said, no, that's not okay. We're not going to do this.
So at this point, you went in there to talk about masks.
Yes.
And masks was all, and so how long, was this the first book to be banned?
Yes.
And it's interesting that this year, because I was reading up on this, the NEA, the National Education Association, had they suggested reading for the teachers across the country. That was one of the books that they suggested that they read, as well as White Fragility. So why do you think the NEA came out and said teachers across the US during their summer break should read this book?
I think that Brandy Weingarten has been amazing in fighting against book bans, and I think that she as well sees the value in this book. You know, yes, there are 2 controversial pages in it, but it's also a graphic novel, so it's not, you know, pictures, it's literally cartoon drawings. And it's also pages that teach consent when it comes to sexual relationships.
Right.
And so, you know, I think that it's very wise of her to be advising people to, yes, read this book, because when we're seeing so many bans on LGBTQ plus students across the country, and teachers being able to support those kids, like our laws in Florida, I think she's sending a very strong message that read this so that if a kid comes to you, you can relate and you can understand where they're coming from and you can help guide them.
Wow. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So from that, how did you decide, well, we're gonna make an organization? Like what's the steps to get to?
So we started out petitioning the board to put the book back, because our Orange County policy is if a book is challenged, it stays on the shelf until it goes through all of its committee reviews. To this day, genderqueer has still not officially been challenged, nor has it gone through any committee review.
Oh, wow.
It was just cut off at that day. It's never been reviewed. And so we were like, come on, read the book, put it through the committees. Let's see what everybody else thinks. And the board refused to do so. And then during like a 3-month span, I think it was, after that, I then discovered that they were shadow banning All Boys Aren't Blue, which is where it'll show in the system that the book is available, but if a student tries to check it out, they're like, oops, we don't have it.
So is that the librarians doing that? How does that happen?
So it came down from somebody at the district level saying, don't let this book be available to students. And we actually found instances of it at Winter Park High School.
Is that legal?
No.
Okay. So how do you verify that? I mean, if you're a parent, and you go and your child says, I can't find this book, they say it exists, what do you do?
So we started filing public records requests early on to get this information, and that's what led me to figure out that they were shadow banning All Boys Aren't Blue, and then I eventually I identified a Winter Park, Dr. Phillips parent of a high schooler who asked their kid to check it out, and they were told, no, I'm sorry, it's not available, even though it showed in the system that it was. So I then went to the board and I said, I have this documentation, and all of a sudden the next week it was back in the system.
So just to ask, so was shadow banning happening before Moms for Liberty?
No.
Okay, so they really have been at the forefront of what's going on.
Before they became an organization and whatever monster it is that they are now, our schools had not seen book challenges in decades.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, all right, so you see the problem. Are you by yourself at this point, or have you connected with other people? Like, are you the other board members that you have on the organization? Are they with you at this point, or?
It started with me and Stefana Farrell,
Okay.
who's another Orange County parent. We started it all, and then by late January of 2022, I was like, we're getting a lot of traction here all of a sudden. People are paying attention to what we're doing. We should probably become an organization. Because, I don't know, like, people could just steal our stuff. Like, at this point, we're just a Twitter handle. So yeah, then we decided to be.
So how did you decide to be a C4?
We decided to be a C4 because we wanted to be able to hold that political edge versus a C3.
Okay.
We wanted to be able to endorse candidates because, you know, it was 2022, so
yeah,
we're looking at school boards, we're looking at everything where everybody's rights are coming under attack. So we wanted to be able to do that. We wanted to be able to go to Tallahassee and lobby politicians about policy. And so that's the route that we decided to go down.
So have you found it difficult with donations because it's non-tax deductible, and so how have you had any, no, you've been able to?
Nobody's complained about that yet,
Okay.
which is great.
It is
you know,
great.
I think that's a good testament to the battle that we're fighting, is that people see it as essential.
Right.
Rather than, oh, I'm going to write this check to whatever just to make me feel good about supporting a charity and
Right.
being able to write it off. Yeah, we have not had that at all. And we've had people approach us to fundraise for us. There was a GSA at a school in Tampa who approached us, and one of the parents of the children runs a foundation over there. And so the GSA raised money for us, and then his foundation matched what they raised, and
Wow.
and nobody cared that it was just for a C4.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So you testified before Congressman Jamie Raskin's Subcommittee on Civil Rights and Civil Liberties about the harms of Florida's Don't Say Gay bill. How did that opportunity present itself? Like, did Florida, did Congressman Raskin's group reach out to you? Like, how did you actually end up doing this? That's pretty amazing. Within such a short period of time.
Oh my gosh, it feels like a million years ago already. So I think it came down through a connection with Red, Wine, and Blue.
And what is Red, Wine, and Blue?
Red, Wine, and Blue is a national organization who they fight the broader cause of what we're seeing in the Republican takeover, the right-wing takeover of schools and whatnot.
So they're focused on education.
Yeah, and they're led by somebody who used to work in, she wasn't a congressperson, but she used to work, in the field. So she knows all the in and outs of Washington. I did a couple of things with them separately about raising a non-binary child and, how the attacks on genderqueer affected us. And we just got invited to a meeting one day with one of Rep. Raskin's staff members just to talk.
In DC or on Zoom?
No, on
or
Zoom.
what? On
Yeah,
Zoom.
just
On
on
Zoom.
Zoom.
Okay.
And so I was like, I don't even know, what do we do? I put on a nice blouse because I wasn't sure. And this guy shows up in a trucker hat and t-shirt. And I was just like, yes, there are people.
Yay.
And so Stefan and I talked to him for about an hour, and we just talked about what we were facing in Florida and what our personal situations were. And I don't know, maybe 2 weeks later, I got an email with the official invitation from Rep. Raskin to come to Congress. And I was like, oh my God!
That's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, of all the people to be able to go to testify for,
That's right.
I mean, incredible.
And this was because of Florida House Bill
1557.
1557, the Parental
Yes.
Rights in Education, also called the Don't Say Gay bill.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this bill says that books are only to be considered classroom instruction when they are read aloud or assigned to the class. And I believe that you and your family are in a lawsuit
Yes.
associated with this bill.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think this bill really means for our schools? How have we seen it in action? And how does this bill connect to your family's experience as well?
So 1557 limited the discussion of gender identity or sexual orientation in K-3, which we know was never happening anyway. More made up stuff by the extreme right. So our take on the lawsuit was when the bill first became law, my two youngest children were in 1st and 3rd grade. So they were directly affected by this law, which means that all of a sudden the book Pride by Rob Sanders, which is written for 1st to 3rd graders, could not be read in our classroom libraries because it's about Harvey Milk. And so it talks about gender identity and sexuality. So that's how we became involved with the lawsuit. And, you know, while it didn't necessarily happen in our schools, the ones that my kids go to, it has happened across the county. And so we're representative of the effect that it's had in Orange County schools.
Okay, so from that sort of, I'm going to say notoriety, because I looked and your family's interviewed and then there's pictures of you and you're associated with this lawsuit very publicly. Have you had anything happen? Have you had any negative feedback or negative things happen as a result of this?
Yeah, when it first was filed, I had a couple of older Caucasian men message me on Facebook and tell me horrible things like they hope I got a millstone, and I didn't even know what that was. I had to look it up. I was like, what are they telling me? But yeah, so I faced that. I faced a lot of online harassment from Moms for Liberty, actual public harassment from their Proud Boy friends like Jacob Engels. You know, I was chased around the courthouse downtown last summer by him. Yeah, it's died down since last summer,
Okay.
which is good. I count that as a win.
Right.
He doesn't show to our rallies anymore, so I'm happy about that. But yeah, we definitely.
And what about
Felt
your children?
They have not had
That's
to
wonderful.
experience
Well,
it at
good.
all, which is
I am so
which is my
glad.
biggest thing, you know. And I used to take them before I got like super active. I would take them to rallies and things because it's important for my kids to experience the things that I'm fighting for, and because they fight for the same things. You know, they believe the same things we do. My youngest is 7, my oldest is 15. My 7-year-old, you know, she's got very strong opinions on Ron DeSantis.
Well, you know, that's not a bad thing.
It's great. But, you know, I don't take them anymore just because I don't want them to be in a situation like what I faced last summer, because that was legitimately scary. Like, I had to be escorted away and like hid in the back of my own car to leave the event.
And what event were you at?
It was a rally in front of the courthouse about trans rights.
Okay, all right.
And so we had 4 Proud Boys show up.
Were they focused on you?
Yes.
Okay.
That was the whole problem.
It was very
Yeah.
intentional.
Yeah.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
All right, so we have House Bill 1557. Next we have House Bill 1467, also known as the book ban law, and that was 2022. What did this law bring to us?
So 1467, first of all, it banned libraries from having books to deal with gender identity or human sexuality.
Okay, so it's
So the same
taking,
thing as 1557, but you're not allowed to have books that reflect on those.
wow.
And then it was expanded by the State Board of Education throughout the end of last year so that every single media specialist who is trained at the very least at the master's degree level in their field, they now had to take a new state training system that was implemented by the DOE, people who don't know anything about library science or, you know,
Right.
how collections are curated, etc. And with that training came the new threats that they throw out about if you violate these rules and you put a book in your collection that features these themes, then you'll face a 3rd-degree felony.
Wow.
And their training leans very heavily on that threat. It's mentioned more than once. If you're caught doing this, you will face a 3rd-degree felony. And that's a serious crime. Not only are you losing your teaching license, you face jail time, fines, you can never vote again.
Wow.
You know, very serious.
So has anybody actually been taken to court for that though?
No.
No, okay.
And, you know, it's another one of these things that Florida has done, you know, the very vague wording of all of these bills and laws. You know, because technically the DOE doesn't have the authority to press these charges against somebody. You know, it's all scare tactics.
Right, and so can just any parent bring the complaint against
Yes.
the media specialist?
Yes.
Wow, okay, so I can see how that would be potentially great.
Yeah, so we're seeing, I mean, you know, I've had media specialists contact me. I had one first grade teacher from Orange County meet me in the parking lot at the Alafaya Library in tears, giving me 6 boxes of her classroom library because she just didn't want to deal with, you know, what could happen to her.
Right,
She'd rather get rid of it and have me distribute it back out again than throw it all away.
oh. All right, so now we have 2023. There's House Bill 7. So we're now on the third one. This is also known as the Stop Woke Act. So I was reading this bill yesterday, and I got to the section of the bill that includes this statement, that this cannot be part of any employment training or included in education. And it goes on to talk about adverse treatment of people. Basically, it appears to be addressing civil rights and our history of slavery here in the United States. But it's talking about employment training and education. So it looks like they're broadening this. So how is this bill actually being used? What is it actually meaning both for schools, and do you see it going out into an employment situation?
As far as employment, I don't know. I have not had reports on that. As far as schools, yes. You know, the biggest group of books that are banned in our schools have had LGBTQ plus themes. The second in line to that, very close second, is books about people of color. And that is where HB7 is piling in, because we don't want white kids to feel guilty that they somehow have a privilege over black kids, right? What the interesting part of that is that it didn't only cover K to 12, it covered K to 20, which includes public colleges and universities. And so late last year, the ACLU and the fire organization filed a lawsuit against it in higher education, and they did get an injunction against it. So essentially,
it's stopped?
it's a very complicated web in Florida. So while there's an injunction on it at the higher ed level, the lawsuit is not finalized yet. Okay. So, you know, theoretically, college professors can still teach CRT.
Right.
However, we have these new bans on DEI and CRT
Okay.
in public schools, like K to 12 and college. So,
Are they enforcing it then through K through 12, and they're just not enforcing it
Yes.
at the college level?
correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
So this is now just all building up, and we're seeing during all of this time more and more books are being banned.
Yep.
I believe I read that Diary of Anne Frank was a book that was banned. What was the reason for this?
So it was the graphic novel, Anne Frank's Diary graphic novel. It was banned in Indian River County because the Moms for Liberty chair there felt that it didn't offer an accurate depiction of the Holocaust. What she really has a problem with is the fact that Anne was a lesbian. And that she talks about getting her period. Those are the things that she has a problem with. And it's funny because, you know, if you actually think about it, Anne Frank's diary is not about the Holocaust. It's about her experience as a person.
True.
Right? So how can you say that it's not an accurate depiction of the Holocaust? It's a really gross web of how we're seeing organizations like them influence school boards across the state.
Okay, yes, I read it when I was young. It just makes me speechless to think that that book is no longer available. And I think we learn empathy and understanding for other people through reading. And yeah, it's heartbreaking. So from your website, I understand over 900 titles in the state of Florida have been temporarily or permanently removed. Over 1,600 titles have had censorship attempts made. What does it take to actually censor something? Like if you're a parent and you're like, I'm outraged at a book.
You just have to fill out a form.
Yeah?
Yep.
And are these forms something that we can find out about? Like can you can request it to find out who actually...
As part of 1467, they should be available on every school's homepage website.
And is it?
I don't know. I haven't looked through all of them. We have a lot of schools in Orange
No,
County.
I know. 67 school districts, I believe.
Yeah. I know for Orange County, yes.
Okay.
It's on there. Yeah.
And there's been over 3,000 unique attempts via public records of people trying to get books banned.
Mm-hmm.
On your website, there's a lot of information about Duval County. What specifically is making Duval County different?
So, Duval was a bit of a beast at the end of last year. It's not so much anymore right now, but what happened with them was they had approved I think it was a $1.2 million investment into buying a collection of books called, oh my God, what was it? Diverse Voices, not Diverse Voices. Something along those lines, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Blanking right now. There's so many counties to keep track of. Anyway, it was books that were going through K-12 to promote diversity because Duval is a mainly minority school district. And what had happened was they bought the books in bundles. So one classroom, would wind up with, I don't know, let's say 20 books, and maybe they only wanted 5 of them.
Oh.
So then they tried to send the others back. And of course the ones that they wanted to send back were LGBTQ, BIPOC, social justice. And so what they wound up doing was pulling them, the entire collection instead, and putting it back into storage.
Okay.
So we found out about that, put the pressure on, and then they finally had to address the issue. So they did wind up putting most of them back.
Okay.
But at the same time, the new state BOE rule where every single book in every single library and classroom library needed to be scanned was happening. So Duval took the unique response of saying, hey, we're going to take this opportunity to review every single book in our library system.
Where are they finding the money to pay for the people to actually check?
That's a great question because nobody can answer that.
So who's actually checking? I mean, are we just going on the honor system? The parents show up and...
It's media specialists that have to do it.
Okay.
By nature of the law. They're the ones that have to do it. But they don't have a full-time media specialist in every single school.
No, they don't.
So, that's a very cumbersome task. I have a friend, Brian Covey, he was the teacher who was fired from Duval for posting the video of the empty shelves. And his previous life was in finance, so he's good with math, and so he's figuring out, he's constantly posting, our kids only have 0.5% of books available to them right now in the schools. Yeah, so it's a process that...
It's just shocking to me to hear that there's empty shelves in classrooms anyway.
Anywhere, right.
I mean, because there's just almost a glut of physical books if you go around local communities and use bookstores. There's just books everywhere. And
Come to my living room and see.
and yet we are keeping them from kids.
Yeah. Meanwhile, we're 48th in literacy in the country. So sure, let's take away some books.
That's right. Well, it goes back to my original question of how you ended up in Florida, but yes. All right. So you start this group, you're outraged. How do you ramp up from let's take care of Orange County to I want to tackle the whole state? That's a big jump,
I don't know if we wanted to, but
but you did.
needs necessitated. We had a lot of people coming to us from other counties saying like, help, what do we do?
Right? So how did you develop the resources? What resources do you have available, and how do you get them out? If you have somebody from Duval County who reaches out, how do you even address that? You're in Orange. It's not an easy drive.
Yeah, we don't claim to say that we can go to every single district that needs our help, personally. But we've developed a system within our group of members who represent the different areas of the state. Okay. So they can tell us what's happening, and then we can, give them whatever online support we can to man all of their teams. What to say, how to approach your school board, what to do, how to fight back.
Are you providing resources for how to actually organize in your county then?
Yes.
I mean, so if a county reaches out, Volusia County reaches out, you would give them, this is how you should do it.
Yes.
How did you build that? Like what did you just say, well, we figured it out the past 3 months because you've only been around for like 2 years,
yeah,
right?
Basically, it was just experience from what we had done with Orange County.
Okay.
Which has seemed to work. We haven't really deviated from our original plans of how we even just like going back to the masking time, how we would approach our members about mask issues or safety issues.
Do you have members? Do people pay for membership?
No.
Do people just sign up for an email? So what does membership look like for your group?
So for us, we consider our members people who are part of our private Facebook group. So we have 2,300 people in there right now.
Okay.
And those are the people who, you can't just come in and join the group. We vet it extremely well because we have a lot of educators in there.
Okay.
So we want to make sure everybody is protected. So those are what we consider our core membership because we do a lot of organizing inside of that group that, it's not stuff that we would put out on Twitter or whatever.
Okay. And so then do you encourage them to attend, like what is a general action plan? So I'm in a county, I know I need to do more to fight against what's going on. What's the action plan? What do you recommend?
First and foremost is to go to your school board meetings.
Okay.
Speak?
Should I be speaking? Okay.
Yes. And I know not everybody is comfortable with that, especially post-COVID, coming in at the tail end, like when we formed with masks, there was a lot of hostility then. I got yelled at a school board meeting one night over masks because I had rainbow laces in my shoes, and this guy came up to me, a 3%er nonetheless. He's like, "Why do you have to wear gay shoes?" What are you talking about? So I understand, people are nervous about going. That kind of rhetoric has died down a lot from the end of the pandemic, which is nice. But there's still, Moms for Liberty is still going to be there heckling people. They love to heckle queer kids, which I think is really gross. But yeah, come and speak. If you can't write letters, email your board, call your board members, call in if they offer public comment by phone. But really just, standing up to the board and telling them how you feel and how you want to see this all play out is incredibly important because even though, your board member may feel one way, they're still politicians, so they have to, they don't have to, but they should be, deciding on how they're going to approach us, but what their constituents want.
Right. Well, we're seeing school boards across Florida change as a result of elections every year now, right?
Yeah.
I know I'm in Seminole County. We were able to fight it a bit.
Yeah, you guys wound up great, actually.
Well, it worked out. Touch wood. I'm not going to assume it's going to continue that way. They will continue to press, I assume. So, what can somebody do if they're in a county that has been overrun, essentially? Does going to the meeting really make a difference?
It does.
What sort of language should you bring in? Like, what do you say?
You want to appeal to the fact that we're supposed to be, Moms for Liberty's big message is protecting the children. Well, I want my kids protected too. I've got 2 queer kids. I want my kids protected too. Why does your version of what protection is trump whatever my version of it is? And so I think, reminding the board and whoever else may be watching that all of these things are important too is a great way to get the messaging out there. It's difficult, and also, you know, identify people. We're coming up to another election season again. Identify people who can run for these positions,
Right.
and get behind them now and start promoting them now. Get them out into the community, get them doing work so that we can try and like cut them off at the pass.
And what if you don't have children?
If you don't have children and you're a resident of the district, you are still a stakeholder. You still pay taxes.
So
You should still get out there and do it because we need all hands on deck.
Okay. I'm going to ask about collaboration before we close up. Do you collaborate with other groups? Who do you collaborate with, and how could somebody work with collaboration in their area?
Yeah, we collaborate with lots of groups. In Duval, there's a group called Public School Defenders that we work with on the regular. Out on the West Coast, in Sarasota, there's Save Our Schools that we work with. There's another group in Brevard called Families for Safe Schools. Yeah, because our focus is so small, whereas a lot of these other groups are focusing on everything regarding public ed, we try to work with all of them to bring what our expertise into them.
Right.
To give them a service. So yeah, I mean, just email me.
Okay.
I'm happy to help everybody.
You're happy to help everybody and connect them. Okay, so before we go to Q&A from everybody, what would you like to share about the Florida Freedom to Read project and how to help out and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, join our Facebook group. You can get activated that way. Conversation is one of the best ways to get a lot of this work done. Just to connect people together, work with other counties. If it's a county that's adjacent to us, I'm always happy to go up to one of those to help out. I've done it for Osceola and Seminole. I've gone to several of their board meetings to help. It's such an important fight to try to help stop the dumbing down of our kids' education. Because, like you said, like, why would you come to Florida? I grew up in New Jersey. New Jersey has like really great public education. Florida's losing out terribly on that right now. And so we really, we do need all hands on deck to help protect what our kids can learn and what they should be learning, and to stop trying to hide history from them. So, thank you.
I was wondering if one of you could answer this question. I know that these books are banned in schools, but if you had a nonprofit or museum, would you be allowed to put these books on a shelf and offer them to children and not get in trouble?
Yes. There is no law right now that that prohibits a private organization from distributing books, and that's what I do. My main focus right now with the organization is to host community events and participate in community events where we get these books back out into the community. Because if our kids can't get them at school, our original mission was, okay, if they're going to take them away from schools, we'll donate them and put them back in, but we can't do that. So now we have to go straight to the community and give them out. So yes, you cannot get arrested for that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming. My question is, do you think the kids in schools are aware of how much they're being affected?
Yes, 100%. My kids they're going to be going into now 2nd, 4th, 8th, and 11th grade. And they are 100% aware. I mean, obviously because of me, they are anyway. But there's definitely lots of kids who witness what's happening. One of my really good friends is Will Larkins, who's a former Winter Park High School activist. And he used to send me videos at the end of the school year of him having to help his teachers move their bookcases into closets and empty them out because of the new restrictions. So yes, these kids, they see it. They definitely see it. They know.
And good parents will make sure they know about it too, right?
Yes.
So I just want to say, I think banning books is abhorrent, so take what I say to come with a grain of salt. But sometimes I think the way to fight things like this is to fight BS with BS. And I want to know, are there books to listen to the right wing, they would say that the only books that are objectionable that are in schools are all books that have a left-wing socialist Marxist tilt. You've probably heard stories about people trying to get the Bible banned from schools because of bestiality and all kinds of other objectionable things. So are there books with a right-wing slant that if I wanted to raise objections, things that Moms for Liberty would find my attempts to ban their books objectionable? Because to me, the only way to fight these things is to hit them back. So, again, banning books is abhorrent, but should I be trying that?
I mean, you know, my organization would say no because we're anti-censorship, but me personally, I would, you know, you do reach a point where you're like, God, how long are we going to let this go on for, right? There's a rabbi in Palm Beach County right now who's trying to get the Bible banned. And I'm like, go for it, man. You know, as far as the Moms for Liberty books, there are some books that they approve of. They go to the publishing house of Brave Books. And then there's the Tuttle twins as well, which I know are in some public schools. Which if I was going to target something, that's what I would target.
Tuttle twins.
The Tuttle twins, yes. There's also one of the books of the Bible. I really don't know about the Bible. But one of the books of the Bible is on the Florida Best Standards list. So they skirt it that way. Yeah. Not ideal.
Go ahead.
My question is, how do you find the courage to stand up against such a huge monster? I'm a mother, my child is in elementary school, and I live in a predominantly white, privileged area. So showing up to a school board meeting where everybody else is on board with the sort of Moms for Liberty right-wing agenda, as a pretty far left-leaning person, it's difficult. It's difficult for me to speak to like-minded people in public now, so it's good. I feel like it's going to be hard, but I want to have the courage to do that. So,
come to meetings with support. You know, always go in a group. Always, just out of general safety. I mean, that's one thing I learned towards the end of COVID is make sure you're in a group because these people do get aggressive. It is. I mean, it might be stupidity on my end, but I just tend to not care. And I just, you know, I think I was like born ready to fight. So, anyway, even if you don't talk, even if you just come and support, that in itself is a huge help. You know, I've had some of our board members tell me in the past, like just seeing all of your faces there when we're listening to them helps a huge amount. It lets them know, it reminds them that those are the crazy people and not the rest of us. You know, just take it little by little, you know, I mean, how much do you want to piss off people on Facebook, you know, make the posts.
I don't know. I mean, I work for a company that's military industrial complex.
Yeah, I do have that luxury that all of my work is volunteer.
Yeah.
So I don't fall into where I need to make sure that I'm
Protected.
not, yeah. And I sympathize with that. I absolutely do, 100%. And again, so maybe your role in it all is be that support person. You know, wear the t-shirts, come up to the meetings, and just be there to help everybody else.
You have brave friends. Bring a coalition, and you can build a coalition in your group, right?
Yep.
If you know people that are around the school.
Yep.
I have two questions. I heard that the Moms for Liberty, most of their kids were homeschooled. Do you know if that's right?
Yes. They're either homeschooled or they have Hope scholarships because they were COVID bullied.
I just more of a comment than a question, but I wanted to tell you about one of our Volusia County School Board members, Ruben Colon. And he easily won his seat, and he's very progressive and very supportive of pride and of all students, Volusia County. But it's a very red county.
Yeah.
He didn't win on being progressive or supportive of left-wing agenda. He also is he does a lot of work with universities, getting students so they can take advanced classes and get college credits so they don't have to borrow so much money, and vocational schools, partnerships with companies for the kids who don't go to college to get them good jobs and get them good training. So he won. I think it's really important that if you're choosing school board candidates that they have broader appeal beyond that. If they're on your side, that's great, but they need to be, you need to look at the bigger picture, especially in the really red states or red counties.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much for coming and talking. This, I think this is so incredibly important. I think you all feel that way, but I just want to reiterate, it's easy, particularly as we get older, to think, well, it's not affecting me and I don't have kids that are in school right now. But these are the people that are going to be the doctors and nurses in your hospital. These are the engineers that are going to be building your roads and designing a future that's going to address climate change and everything else. And so we know the world that we want to be living in, and we make that happen through our actions. So please keep that in mind. Please remember to support organizations that are doing such incredible work. And what you're doing is amazing. It really is.